Hello there, LinkedIn family. Jonathan here from Some Talented People. So today's little bit of learning for you is about barriers to learning. Now, I'm going to have to span across a few different sources for this, and at the end of the video after me, I enclose a clip of one of the biggest barriers we face to learning and good cognitive function, which is eating regularly. But essentially, here's how human brains work. We don't like being told what to do. We don't even like it when we tell ourselves what to do. So if you go, oh, I must stop smoking, or I must eat better food, or this, that, any kind of must, should have, would have, must do, those sort of internal communications create the barriers that you make for yourself. You go, oh, I don't want to listen to what you're telling me to do. I'm going to do what you asked me to do. No. And so what basically happens is that I referred to an earlier post about a book called Nudge, which rather than trying to instruct people as a different way to be, what it does is it makes it easier to follow one path than to follow your existing path. So nudging yourself to change as a talk I gave, it will be on my YouTube channel, which is one element of it. What I discovered, so I spent 10, 11 years volunteering in primary schools, and any of you with children will recognize that up to about 6, they're like, whoa, just incredible energy. And then after about 7, they start like that, slumped down, even lying face down on the desk. And the reason this happens is because children have just utter exuberance and energy, and yet what we do in schools is we get them to sit still, be quiet, don't rock, don't look up, look at the teacher, look at the front, shut up, be quiet, or you'll get in trouble, or you'll send to the head teacher. So all of those types of what I think people mistakenly think is discipline, all of those activities create massive barriers, because what you're doing to the children's brains is you're making them unhappy. And I've talked about the happiness advantage before. So if a brain is happy before it begins work, then it makes 30% more effort, it's more accurate, makes less mistakes, and things of that nature. So children and adults, if we want to learn something new, the first and most important thing you can do is be happy. You haven't got to be happy about the particular task. You can just make yourself laugh looking at a cat video on YouTube, or a laughing baby. Doesn't really matter what it is. It's simply that when you laugh, ideally hysterically, then you get a dopamine release, which both feels good and provides motivation for the task you're about to undertake. And so what happens then is, because your brain's in a happy state and your brain is flooding dopamine into your hippocampus, which is where short-term memories and long-term memories are transferred. So if you do that, the barriers come down. The second thing really, or the third thing really, about barriers to learning is that so we all exist within our own reality. There is really no objective reality. It's just an idea that we all share. It's like a mass hallucination. So accepting new ideas is extremely difficult for human brains because of confirmation bias. So once we believe one thing to be true, anything else that's presented to us, even what someone who disagrees with us would say is fact, is not seen as fact. It's seen as verification of our current belief. So we will twist around in our head, do mental gymnastics to prove that what we think already is borne out by the evidence we've now been shown. And so it's extremely difficult if you don't get your mind and your body into the right state for learning. So happy, slept, and the final thing, so the video I'm going to attach at the end of this is from The Brain by David Eagleman. And the difference in your capacity to make good decisions is threefold worse by the time lunchtime comes round if you've had breakfast, which a lot of people miss. The need of your brain for glucose as a sugar is the main fuel for your prefrontal cortex. And so your executive decision making relies on your brain being fed with glucose, basically. And so if you're missing breakfast, and if you're working through back to back, we're all doing Zoom meetings back to back to back to back to back, that inherently makes your brain more likely to make mistakes and poor judgments. Oh, and finally, I almost forgot, sleep. So sleeping before you take on learning allows your brain to be in a good state. So sleep, laugh, focus on the idea that you're not telling yourself to learn a thing, but you're just looking at information. Oh, and there's one other thing as well I should remember. Excuse me. In neuro-linguistic programming, which I've been using for 25 years, there are things called presuppositions. Now, we all have our inherent biases, we all have our opinions, and so what presuppositions are, it's a way of exploring a different version of reality. So, for example, let's say you believe the moon is made out of Swiss cheese, and you're going to carry on believing that until you die, basically. So how can you change a belief and learn something that you currently believe otherwise? Well, this is where presuppositions even come in. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, if I wanted to believe the moon was made out of rock and dust, and whatever the moon is made out of, frankly, I don't know, what else would I have to believe? And then you start doing mind experiments. Well, if I believe the moon was made out of dust, I'd have to believe that planets are made out of rocks and dust. I'd have to believe that there isn't a giant mouse in space who's going to eat that ball of cheese. I'd have to accept the moon landings and the data we get from that. I'd have to, I watched this in The Big Bang Theory, I'd have to know that you can fire a laser at the moon, and a little reflective pad that was put up there with the moon landings will return that laser beam to you. So I'd have to believe 4 or 5 other things in order to change my belief that the moon isn't made out of cheese. And what happens is that the process of asking yourself questions about what you'd need to believe opens up your mind in a way whereby it's not an affront to what you currently believe. It's merely a mental exercise to practice the idea of believing something new. So barriers to learning exists. We can change this by sleeping, laughing, focusing, presuppositions, taking the information as a presupposition, as I said, and looking to actually expand our knowledge base beyond what we currently know by asking hypothetical questions. And as I said, and I'll show you in the video next, that eating has such a profound difference on your brain's functionality that to not do so is literally ridiculous. So enjoy this video, have a nice day, and I will see you again soon.